Good morning, Facebook. Norman Hartman here with Monday Morning Motivation. Hope you guys are up and ready to get started. I am so excited. Look, it's like every Monday morning, every week, I become even more excited because I have another day that prior to was not promised. Good to see you on again, Denise. Hopefully you got the announcement there. Good morning, guys. I am extremely excited because I have the opportunity to share with you some things that have been stirring on the inside really all this morning, and I'm excited to get into it. So let me kind of share with you a little bit about my weekend as we get a few more people on, okay? So as you can see, my background is different. It's a little lopsided there, just kind of dealing with the station that I have. Thank you to those that came up with me out of town yesterday, myself and my wife. We had to minister at another church out of town, and we were actually in the same city as my mother and father-in-law, so we had a chance to spend some time with them, as where you see I am now. But thank you so much. We were able to minister yesterday, and everything went for it well, and it was just a great opportunity to do that. So that's why you guys see me in the casual dress as well. So don't hold it against me too much. But had a great time yesterday, and so I'm so excited about this morning. Before I jump into our topic this morning, I want to let you know that we have someone. Actually, he's a published author, a new author. He's a public speaker, motivational speaker. And he speaks around our area. He's been down as far as Florida, to my understanding. Speaks all over Georgia, and so I'm excited to have this gentleman with us next week. So please invite someone to come and watch next week. Show him your love, and we're gonna have a great time. So, as you guys can see, the topic that I posted out there. The power of understanding how other people think, okay? Really, I wanted to phrase it differently, but in terms of putting it out there, I termed it that way. But really, it's the power of understanding yourself and how to be understood by other people, okay? So, I want to start out with this story. It's a literal story, and that it was about a man that wanted to get some results from people, okay? And so the man, he shared instructions with the people, told them what he wanted to do, what he wanted to get from them. And the people, they took the instructions, they heard it, but for whatever reason, they didn't follow the instructions. And so the man came back and he shouted, he scolded the people because they did not follow the instructions. And seemingly the people kind of took the information. They said that they were going to follow the instructions, but then only to find out that behind the scenes, the people were really upset about the scolding that they received. They were really upset about the way that they were treated, and so they only moved forward to follow the instructions when they were in the presence of this leader that gave them this information, okay? So I want to stop there with this story, and then I'm going to explain a little more about how to understand yourself, or you yourself make sure you're understood, and how to understand other people. So I've been reading this book now, which is called How to Win Friends and Influence People. And it's a book that was written by Dale Carnegie in the early 20th century, 1936. It was debuted, and it was really a book that was 20 years in the making. If you look at it, from the time that Dale Carnegie started giving the first lecture in the YMCA, and leading up to this point, Dale Carnegie, he was actually broke after trying to become an actor, and found himself in the YMCA, and he formed an agreement, and that if he started teaching these classes based on some research that he had done, then he would be able to take in some of the profits. And what he realized in talking to people is that one of the shortfalls that people had was in dealing with other people. So how to talk to people, how to converse to people, how to win people over to what it is that you're sharing with them. And he realized that a lot of people were lacking these skills. And so just by speaking on this one topic alone, and then coming up with this book 20 years later. So how he came up with the book, right? So he gave this first lecture actually in 1912. And as he started giving these lectures out, he started instructing his attendees to go out, try the things that he was telling him to do, come back, they would talk about it, and they would revise it. So what started out first as an hour-and-a-half lecture, now today is a book, okay? So here's the important thing. As I'm reading this book, it's important. It's amazing to me because usually I'm able to digest information quickly, and I'm able to move to the next page or move to the next sound bite in order to get information. But I really only am digesting this book slowly because it's like holding up a mirror as I'm reading this book, and I'm seeing a lot of things on the inside of me. So a lot of things that I don't like. I see how things things within my character that are strengths in one area, that they're weaknesses in other area. And for instance, one of the ways that I've generated success for myself, even in all the different types of things that I've done, even in high school, when I competed in a lot of competitions, was I was super critical of myself. Even down to losing weight, the way that I lost weight the first time that I lost it, coming into high school, was I was super critical of myself. I would, I was basically my worst critic. And so when it came to other people, it was hard to turn that switch off, right? If I'm always super critical of myself, my speech, my thoughts, my appearance, everything about myself, then it's really hard to turn that switch off with dealing with other people, right? And so my strength, in a way, became my weakness, and I wasn't really seeing that because I held myself to an incredibly high standard, and I also held people to that same high standard, and only to realize that creates failure, especially when you're trying to lead other people. So even though you are, and let me start by saying this, if you are a person that's super critical of yourself and you hold yourself to high expectations, you may have to tailor how you critique other people in order to bring them up to that same standard. So it's okay to call people to a higher standard, but it's really important to understand how people work, and specifically how people think, before you try before you start critiquing them to bring them up to that standard. So here's one of the things that I really learned is negative criticism, how people view and think about negative criticism. Let's go back to this story that I shared with you about this leader that gave instructions, and because the instructions were broken, he scolded the people, and really the people behind the back of the leader just let him have it. They didn't really like what he had to say. They didn't like the fact that he had to critique him, that he had to critique the group, and they only did what was asked of them in front of the leader because they were scolded. So I want you to think back to your childhood. And I'm sure a lot of us, got a lot of beatings coming up. I mean, anything that your parents could grab, a shoe, an extension cord, if it was next to them, that's what they beat you with, right? But go back to think of that. How did you respond to that, right? A lot of us may say, man, my parents, they really put the fear of God in me in terms of beating me. But I want to ask, were there still some things that you did that went against your parents? Did the beatings completely stop you from doing what it is that you made up in your mind to do? No. A lot of us either did things to save face. So there are things that we weren't bold enough to do in front of our parents or grandparents, or those extended family members that had the authority to discipline us. But a lot of us may have snuck out of the house in the middle of the night, or when our parents were away, we decided to do things that we weren't allowed to do when they weren't around. Or some of us bottle all of that up for 18 years until we were finally able to leave the house. And that's when you see a lot of children go wild, because the parent or the mindset is, if I'm strict on my child, or if I'm always using this type of criticism and trying to improve them and trying to discipline them, then they're not going to do wrong. And that's completely opposite, because we as human beings, and some of us may have heard this before, we're not created to rule over one another. Okay, and I'm not trying to preach this morning, but I am a Christian, so I'm going to bring this in. I want you guys to start to get some of that light there. Is that God gave us the earth to rule over and have dominion over, not each other. Okay, so anytime you try to rule over another person, anytime you eat, especially if you're in a position of leadership where you have a team and people under you, anytime you start pressing your thumb down on a person, the people are going to rebel. Okay, even children, anytime you start pressing down on a child like this, they're a child and they have to respond in a certain way because you are their parent. But when that child is old enough, they're going to remove that restraint off of them, and the respect that you wanted to maintain and have as a parent, you're no longer going to have, because that child is no longer a child. Okay, so it's very important that you deal with people in the right way. Okay, so here's a fallacy. A fallacy is, if you're going to get somebody to do things your way, then you have to give them criticisms on how to improve themselves, and there have to be negative consequences. All right. Now, I'm a person that believes in consequences. I believe that if there's an action, then there's a consequence. Now, consequences are positive, consequences are negative. Okay, so if you do something that is negative, so if I go out and I break the law, right? There's this new law out, hands-free in Georgia. So if I'm driving down the road and I'm texting and a police officer catches me, he has the right to pull me over, right? He has the right to write me a ticket. Why? Because there is the law which stands there, which says that we're not allowed to have our phones anymore. Right, but how many people do we still see driving down the road with their phones? Because the thought process is, if I don't see an officer around me, then I can continue to text. But again, we all know that there are negative consequences on there. But let's focus and flip this on the positive consequence. And let me pull some information from this book. So there was a manager that was over a construction site, right? He was a general contractor. Or project manager, however you want to say it. And every time he came around, he saw his workers with their hats off, with their hard hats off. And he would scold them the same way. You need to do this. This is policy. You need to always wear your hat at all times, just to make sure that you're in compliance. And so every time they saw the manager, they had the person on lookout that was, hey, the boss man is coming around. Make sure you have your hard hats on, right? So he realized that this wasn't working, and then he grabbed hold of this information that Dale Carnegie was teaching about teaching positive criticism, or understanding how people think. And he started telling people about the positive benefits, or the reason behind wearing the hard hats. He said, hey, let me first off ask, are the hats uncomfortable? Do we need to find a way to make the hats more comfortable? Well, I really want to make sure that you guys are wearing this because it's to protect you. We're really hearing about the increase, and I'm kind of going on from this. We're hearing about the increase of accidents that are happening in the workplace that are crippling people for life. And so we want to make sure that we protect you from injuring yourself and impacting not only yourself but your families, right? And so when they came at it from that standpoint, they no longer had a problem with people wearing the hard hats in the workplace. You see the complete difference? And a lot of times we think that we have to scold people, right? We live in a society that, if somebody does wrong or somebody does you wrong, you have to scold them in order for them to get the point. And that's not necessarily the case. A lot of times it's the emotion behind it and the way we feel in terms of being disrespected or people not following what it is that we have to say that makes us feel as though we have to be forceful, that we have to tell people a certain way to do it in order for them to get the point. And that's not the case. All right. People are smart. People want to be respected. Even though we want to be respected and we want our rules and we want our instructions as leaders and in dealing with other people to be respected, people still want to be respected in dealing with people or being corrected. Okay. So why is it that we have this response when somebody criticizes us negatively? Okay. And the book talks about this, and I found this to be true within my own life when I started evaluating other situations. Anytime you criticize someone, especially negatively, and you're not monitoring your tone, you're not monitoring your words, or you try to criticize someone, the person immediately goes into defense mode. Okay. So defense mode can be the person appears to be listening, but what you're telling them is going in one ear and not the other. Defense mode can be the person lashes back out at you, right? But either way, the results that you want are not accomplished. Why? Because the person is trying to defend their position. It's amazing that the book talked about all kinds of murderers and just criminals that were caught, and the majority of the criminals that were caught didn't really feel like they were in the wrong, right? Guys like Al Capone, when they were caught, they really thought that they were humanitarians. And you really look at the crimes that they did and you say, no way that this guy was a humanitarian. But in their own mind, they found a way to defend themselves because that's just human nature, right? Anytime, most of us, when we're called out on the carpet, most of us seek first to defend ourselves, and then later we go back and say, you know what, you were right. I had a conversation with my wife the other day, and I was just trying, and it was actually right after I listened to a little bit of this book, and it was probably about 30 seconds, and I had to shut it off because I had to meditate on what was being said to me and reflect on it. And I said, babe, let me ask you this. I said, what is it about direct criticism that people don't like, but if I'm listening to something indirectly, then I'm able to receive it more openly? Say, like, for instance, let's say if I have a weight issue, right? And somebody comes to me and they say, hey, I noticed that you're getting a little bit chunky, you need to, pay attention to that. And versus if I'm listening to a podcast and somebody says the same thing, in an audience talking to 5,000 people, why do I receive that information better indirectly than I do directly? And I had to meditate on it and kind of listen to what my wife was saying as well. And it's because anytime you are spreading truth, it's like a light, okay? And truth is a very powerful light. And so if you take that light and you shine it directly in someone's eye, even though light is good, that light becomes blinding to that person. And so you start taking criticism and you point it at a person directly, then they're going to respond in kind, because you imagine if somebody were to take a powerful UV light or a powerful bright light and point it in your eye. What are you going to do? Immediately you're going to swat at the person to get the light out of your eye. And the person says, hey, I was just trying to shed light on the situation. I was just trying to bring something to your attention. Well, thank you for bringing light to the situation, but you just pointed it right in my eye, so I can't receive it. Versus receiving it indirectly, if a person is talking over a podcast, this person doesn't know me from Adam. They don't have any, they don't have relationship with me, so I can extract from the light information that they're sharing. Why? Because I know that this person does not have any malice toward me, because this person does not understand me. They don't know me. So I can receive what it is that this person is saying, because I know that there is no ulterior motive when this person is speaking to me. So we have to be very careful how we speak to people in terms of criticism, because when you start taking the truth, it's nothing wrong with the truth, but when you start pointing it at a person directly, then the person is not going to receive it, and the results are not going to be accomplished. Okay, so I want to ask you this question. Is it the being understood that's most important in terms of dealing with people, or is it the results? Okay, because a lot of us, when it comes to being frustrated and we're arguing, it's not the results that's most important at that moment to us. It's being understood. It's getting it's the fact that I'm frustrated, right? And a lot of us do this in the workplace, and that's a no-no, to allow your frustrations to get you so much to a point that you're just bubbling over, you're boiling, you're fuming, and you're allowing that frustration to be lashed out on other people, right? So at that point, it's not about the results. It's about the fact that you're frustrated and you want to get your frustration out. But if it's about the results and you take a step back and you say, okay, let me think about this a moment. Let me not say it in this manner, because if I say it in this manner, then the results that I want out of the situation are not going to be accomplished. So the thing that I love about reading or getting good information is that you're always tested on that information. So last week when I received this information, I was tested on it, and I'm not perfect. I'm still growing. As I say, I'm listening to the sound bites, sometimes 5 minutes at a time. I'm used to listening to something, an hour, 2 hours at a time, and being able to digest the information. But it's just something about this book that I've only been able to digest 5 minutes at a time, because I'm navigating through this. But I was tested on it last week, and someone called me out on to the carpet on something, and I felt that they could have tailored their speech a little more. And I'm a words guy, so when it comes to throwing sharp insults, I can go toe to toe. But instead of getting my point across, I just waited, and I said, "Okay, God, I'm biting my tongue. I can." And God told me in that moment, He said, "Don't speak anything regarding your situation, regarding what it is. When you're talking to somebody and you're listening, and they're kind of throwing out their insults or throwing out different things, and then you want to come back and say, okay, well, let me go through my list, right? Instead of doing that, God says, put your list on the back burner, and I want you to listen and respond differently." And I responded differently, and it was hard in the moment, but let me explain the aftermath. The aftermath was so freeing because, number one, without even going through my list of things, the list of things that I had to talk about, and I don't really know how it happened, but the list of things that I had on my mind, the things were addressed without me even speaking on it. So I didn't have to speak on it, and the things were addressed, and they were addressed, and the results that I was looking for were met. So that's number one. Then number two, I found out I don't always have to speak. I don't always have to come back. See, we live in a world where, clap back. Every time we see Facebook or see social media, we're celebrating people for the clapbacks, or we're celebrating people for the insults. And that's really something that we need to get away from. We don't always have to defend ourselves. We don't always feel like, oh, this person said something to me, or I gotta show them that they don't have the best of me, or you're not gonna treat me that way, or you're not gonna talk to me that way. You don't always have to do that. And I'm not saying that you have to lose your spunk, or let people run all over you. I mean, use your discernment in that. But what I'm saying is, your go-to should not be a mode of defense, because if your go-to is a mode of defense, then you're going to be in a negative place, always throwing sharp insults at people, wondering why you're not getting the results from people. And so this book, How to Win Friends and Influence People, is very important. So let me wrap this up here, okay, and kind of put a bow on it. So as we're going out, to work today, as we're going out to doing different things, as we're going out to talk with other people and build relationship, it's important. Try this first. Lead with a different foot. Find the positive way to influence people. Realize that before you form an insult at a person, how that person is going to respond. Because if you respond negatively and you respond with negative criticism, that person is going to defend their position. And let me throw this negative nugget out there as we continue. If a person throws an insult at you, it's because of something that's going on internally with them. It's not about you, okay? So if a person comes and they lash out at you, or they cut you off on the road, or they do something, it has nothing to do with you. And so and I'm talking to myself on this one, the quicker we can get beyond the fact that it has nothing to do with us, then the faster we'll be able to move forward unhindered, right? Faster we'll be able to move forward unhindered, because when we realize that it's not about us and that people are going through their own internal conflicts. You know, I went to the store the other day, and I said I was closing. I'm sorry. I went to the store the other day, and I went in. I said, "Good morning, ma'am," and she said, "Pull." You know, I had my card in. You know, "Good morning." Take your card out. You know, throw my bag across the counter, and I'm like, I'm a customer. I should, be receiving, some type of customer service here. But instead of doing that, I said, you know what? She probably didn't even want to come to work this morning. She probably doesn't enjoy this job. She's probably underpaid, overworked. There's no telling what kind of situation she's going through at home. So why am I going to let somebody who's going through it pull me down to that position when I'm having a good day and this person is not having a good day? Why am I going to let them pull me back down to a place of having a bad day? No, because that had nothing to do with me. Even though I felt it, even though she did lash out at me, that had nothing to do with me, okay? So when we go throughout life today, or when we go through work, go to work today, because I promise you it's going to happen to all of us in some way, shape, or form before the week is out. Someone lashes out at you, someone cuts you off, someone's sharp with you. First off, take a step back and realize that it's not about you. The person's not sharp with you because of you. They're sharp with you because of what's going on internally, okay? So if you can find a way to flip that, in front of that, pass yourself and continue on the road that you started out that morning, then you'll be able to move forward, okay? Then the second thing is, as you're dealing with people, realize, as you're dealing with your children, as you're dealing with subordinates or people that are working for you, as you're dealing with teammates or team members, whatever the case is, don't go for that negative criticism. Go for the positive benefits of that. Go for the positive criticisms, all right? So even if you're dealing with a team member or dealing with team members that for whatever reason keep on doing the same thing, what does frustration do, okay? So I'm going to flip it to the Bible for a moment. So Moses was in the wilderness for 40 years, okay? And along with the children of Israel. He was patient with them. But what happened when he hit the rock twice? He got frustrated with the people, hit the rock twice. As a matter of fact, before that, the first time he wrote the Ten Commandments, he had to write them again. Why? Because he broke he threw down the tablets of stone because he was frustrated to sin the people, right? So Moses let the frustration, or let what he saw happening with other people, get him into a place of being frustrated, so frustrated that he took the commandments of God, threw them down, broke them, so frustrated that he hit the rock twice and he was unable to go into the promised land, right? So you can't allow people to hold you back from going into the land of promise that God has for you. All right, out of preaching mode. But really though, dealing with people, you can't allow them to get you in that place of being frustrated. Talk to them about the positive benefits, okay? Talk to them about, hey, I really like what you're doing over on this side. Let's talk about what you're doing over here really well. I'm going to give you an A++. I'm going to give you an A++ on showing up on time. You're always on time, and you have a very outgoing personality. I really love what you're doing. Hey, let's talk about how to leverage that on this side in terms of your work ethic. If you can take this positive, upbeat attitude that you have and flip it over here into your work ethic, oh man, you would be for sure the star employee of the month, right? And you see how that's much different than, oh my God, you got to come up on your work ethic. Your work ethic sucks, right? Because when you start talking to a person sharply, then remember, they're going to respond negatively. But when you start showing the people the good things that they're doing and use the good things that people are doing to leverage into things that they need to improve, then now you've got something. So let's talk about that with your children. Didn't I tell you to wash the dishes? Didn't I tell you to do that? Didn't I tell you to do this? Versus, hey, come over, let's talk for a little bit. I want to talk, you are a straight A student. You're very capable. I love what you're doing inside the classroom. Hey, let's talk about let's come up with a plan on how to clean up this room, because it seems like, for whatever reason, this is giving you problem. Hey, talk to me a little bit. And you see what I mean? It makes that child open to receive what it is that you're saying. So much so to now that they want to improve in that area, because now they don't want to disappoint you. But if you come off from a standpoint of being frustrated, being angry, that's what's going to translate and do that, okay? So now, let me stop myself. Hopefully you guys were able to take something from this. Go back. Again, I'm going to advocate this book, How to Win Friends and Influence People by Dale Carnegie. It is doing great things for me. Come back next week. We're going to have our guest with us and make him feel welcome. You guys enjoy the rest of your week. Have a great day.